What's the most fitting case of vigilante justice you've ever heard of? A Mont's son was abducted by his karate teacher and raped over quite a long period of time. The police caught him, and as they were bringing him through the airport, his father pretended to be on a pay phone. When the rapist and police walked by, he turned around and shot the rapist in the head, killing him instantly. This was all caught live on the news. The father wasn't charged with murder. He received 5 years probation. About 6 years ago in Portland, there was this homeless dude going around jerking off in front of all the lady homeless. So this group of other homeless dudes got sick of his. So they waited for him to go into a porta potty one day, then tipped it over on its door with him in it. Funniest thing I've ever heard. A 15-year-old boy imitated a 14-year-old girl to attract the attention of a pedophile. When the pedo went to his house, the kid beat him up and called the police on the guy. All done while wearing a Spider-Man mask. All these stories about rapists getting their teeth kicked in or murdered. What about that badass that drove around his town spray painting dicks on all the potholes? That way the city was forced to repair them. Not like they were just going to clean the paint and leave the pothole. A guy caught a man raping his daughter. By the time the cops got to the scene, the man was bruised and broken and his face was unrecognizable. He told the police that he might have fallen down the stairs a couple times. They accepted that and arrested the rapist. Okay. Not so dark and brutal as most comments here. Czech Republic had its own vigilante hero named Super Václav for a time. He sat in a park. And when dog owner did not pick up after his dog, Super Václav did it for him. And spread it on owner's back. Or, putting out smokers' cigarette on bus stop with bucket or water. Etc. It kind of broke my heart when I read it was probably all just some viral marketing stuff. It's more of just justice, but there's the judge that comes up with punishments that fit the crime. A lady left a box of puppies outside. So he ordered her to sleep outside in a box. I remember a newspaper article going around the internet about a junkie robbing a store. While fleeing, he was stopped by a few Marines on leave. And he stabbed one of them. He then ended up tripping and breaking both his arms, 7 ribs, his jaw and his nose, losing most of his teeth, and crushing his windpipe. A pretty infamous pedophile was released from prison in Ireland a few years back, and for weeks after his release, wherever he went there were stories of people beating the out of him till he eventually had to leave the country. No one else was ever charged for the beatings. My first job was at a tire shop. And I worked with this older guy named Doug. He was around 60, the nicest guy I've ever met. One day at work, a guy and his girl got into a heated argument in our parking lot. And the guy slammed her up against his car. Doug and I saw it. And Doug just looks at me, with a tire iron in his hand, and goes, "1 sec." He walks over to the guy, drops his tire iron, and slams the guy in the ground. He whispered something to him that I couldn't hear from where I was. But the guy got up and opened the passenger door for her and they drove away. Doug walked back over and just started working on a car like nothing ever happened. I'll never forget it. Back in middle school I admittedly bullied this other girl pretty bad. Including once shoving her into some dog. One day her older brothers came by as I was walking home from school and forced me to eat dog. When I was a baby our family was in a bad car accident. My dad got out to check the other driver and he apparently stank of whiskey. Dad dragged him out the car and beat his head off the road. He admitted it to the police when they turned up, and the police apparently said to him, "So that guy must have hit his head on the steering wheel pretty hard then." Dad didn't get in any trouble and the other driver was either too drunk to know what happened or was in so much trouble anyway he never pressed it any further. A couple of guys on the island where I live were robbing all kinds of people and stores in the low season. They robbed the wrong store and a couple of days later their bodies were found in a very public place, shot multiple times. It was the best justice the island has had in some time. My dad always tells me this story from when he was in college in NH. He was friendly with the cops in a small town. The story was that a well-known pedophile that attempted to kill himself by OD. The ambulance picked him up, but just drove around until he died. No one missed him. Completely accidentally. I woke up to the sound of a table being knocked over in the living room. I figured that it was my cat and went out in my boxers to yell at him. There was a dude standing wide-eyed in my living room. My roommate used to have tons of parties. If dude had sat down, I would have thought that he was a guest who slept on the couch. But he bolted out the door. I chased. His mistake was running into the back parking lot. Because there's nowhere to go from there. I caught him and a fistfight ensued. He was almost passive, only trying to block until I grabbed the wad of cash from his hand. Then he started punching back. Soon, the sun came out. He ran off. I was so out of it. I pounded on my roommate's window to let me back in. I didn't realize that I was holding his wallet and keys that I took from the guy. I tripped on a purse that was dropped in my doorway. It was from his first victim. Roomie calls the cops. They just made jokes. Burglary investigator comes around that afternoon. I go down to look at mugshots. Turns out that they already had a suspect. Guy had just done 6 months for burglary in an adjoining neighborhood. He went back to jail. I lost a tooth and had a broken nose. When I was in high school, we had this one teacher. Everybody loved him. He was the kind of teacher you'd remember for decades. He was smart, engaging, a good teacher, and a good human being. He always said, "There is no excuse in the world to fail my class. If you don't get it, I will meet you at a local coffee shop at any hour of any day. And I will walk you through it until you do." And he did. A group of 3 to 4 students in one of my classes asked him for help. He met them at a local coffee shop, bought them all a drink and sat with them to the wee hours of the morning on a Friday night, Saturday morning to make sure they were prepared for the following Monday's exam. Nobody disliked this guy. He was so great. Anyway, there was this one shithead at my school. You know the type. A real for no good reason whatsoever. Always in trouble. Always causing. And nobody liked him. Justin. Anyway, one day, this was walking down the street. And he happened to see the teacher everyone loved in his car with his family. Being the dipshit he is, he started screaming at the teacher. He went on a profanity-laced tirade insulting the teacher, his wife, and his kids. The teacher drove off. The next day at school, the teacher came across in the hallways. He grabbed him by the throat and slammed him up against a locker and said something to the effect of, "You have a problem with me? You can say whatever you want to me. I don't care. I can take it. You say those things in front of my wife and kids ever again. I will kill you." He let him go and walked off. Of course the head ran to the principal and complained. The 8 to 10 kids in the hallway, including me, that saw this go down. We were all interviewed by the principal one by one. Not a single one of us corroborated the asshole's story. We saw nothing, got what he deserved, and we loved every last minute of it. This is over 20 years ago now. I'm old. Somewhere in northern Ontario a few guys bagged a dude. Sack on head and beat him so bad he spent a long time in the hospital. Dude was physically abusing his wife and daughter. Cops came to the high school and questioned people. Everyone knew who did it. Boyfriend of the daughter, but cops dropped all investigations soon after. In South Africa, vigilante justice is common practice. There was a rapist in one of the communities where a group of men held a man, legs open, and set a dog on his genitals. This is usually followed by a large group beating the person to death. The world used to be a different place. Many years ago. When responding to a domestic disturbance, we didn't call it that. If it was obvious the wife had been beaten, the senior officer would remove his hat and pass it around. Cash was put in the hat by everyone present. Then the most junior officer would take the wife and any children out for dinner. Husband was then tied to a chair and tuned up. At the end of the tune-up it was explained that in 1 week officers would be returning to inspect the paperwork for a life insurance policy with the wife as beneficiary. If the paperwork did not exist, another tune-up was in order. If the paperwork did exist, an explanation that if they had to respond there again the wife would be collecting the insurance. Cowboy boots are expensive. Someone ran into a cowboy store and stole a couple pairs and ran towards the exit. My dad tripped the guy, then sat on him and held his legs against his back while laying on top of him in a cowboy hat and boots. Basically hogtied the guy till the cops came. It happened like 5 years ago. In my country there's a huge popular national park close to the city with beautiful mountains, falls, views and all that. So it's common to people go there and spend the day walking and doing some picnic in a kind of lonely natural place. Some group of thieves, 4, though it will be a good idea to go there and steal people. They found an isolated couple, stealing and hitting them. Then tried to rape the woman. The screaming of this couple attracted the attention from the main group that they was with. The National Martial Arts Team, I don't remember the precise kind of martial arts. I'm just say 2 of the burglars had to be evacuated in chopper due his state. Don't worry. All of them survived.